Good evening, and welcome to episode 13 of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and I'm here to talk about market and industry stuff for the week of January 22nd. As always, we're going to start with some simple show news. First, Ashtarothi has opened up a Tweetfleet Slack server. We use Slack as the Aideron chat, and we've been extremely happy with it. We went ahead and opened up a Tweetfleet Slack server. For those who are interested in interacting with me outside of the show, this Tweetfleet Slack server is going to be where most of the chat happens. I'm not in game often enough to really justify an in-game channel. I can't interact with you guys enough, on that front. So, links will be in the YouTube. I will post a join link in the Twitch chat here so that everyone can come and join and chat with people. It'll be a real blast. Also, again, it's CSM season, so I'm going to be running a partial ticket. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. If you're not up to date, I fully support Cap Stable's efforts to interview all the candidates they can. Also, I will be guest hosting on I'll be a guest on their show on Sunday nights, for the next few weeks, where we do sort of meta-analysis of the candidates and talk about the pros and cons. So feel free to tune in there. Moving on, let's get started with the news. So the big news this week is the new Minmatar T3 destroyer. It was teased last week with the big picture here on the screen, and everyone was complaining vertical supremacy, right? And they went ahead and released the more concept art, and the sniper modes and defensive modes come up with vertical modes, which I think is just so cool. I can't wait to see the full animations of this. I bet that Johnny Pugh will have some of the first videos once they become available. And also with this change was announced a artillery change, a small artillery change. Just like the Confessor brought us a small lasers change, we're seeing a small projectile change with the Svipul. And This looks really awesome. I'm really happy with the art team. I think it's going to be another cool ship. I really love these T3 destroyers. Also, if you haven't been following the news, it is CSM Summit season. I think they're at the end of the summit either today or tomorrow. And they have been amazing about getting the notes out. So day 1 was released yesterday. Day 2, I believe, was published today, though I didn't get a chance to read it before this show, so I won't be reviewing it. And I expect the entire summit minutes to be out in the public by Monday next week. So which is just mind-blowing. So good job on those guys. I know Xander's been getting a lot of sarcastic flack about that. Just as some quick little blurbs, I talked with my buddy Random Boy 50 from Aideron to help digest the minutes, because I've been extremely busy. And we talked about CCP Fox 4 was talking about wanting to eliminate Plex as a currency and replace it instead with straight Aurum. So just like in many other games with DLC currency, you would just exchange that currency. You'd buy like a gift card of however many Aurum, and you'd exchange that for the 30-day game time or the next store stuff or dual character training or whatever. You would just pay that currency, and so we wouldn't have Plex and Aurum and ISK. So that's one thing he was proposing. Another big topic, which we should be hearing more about in the upcoming weeks, is social clubs. They were proposed by Mike Azariah. So these things exist outside of game already. Things like Bomber's Bar and Spectre Fleet and all these other sort of loose-knit groups that practice what's called NPSI, if you haven't heard about it. Not purple shoot it, so they just go nuts on everyone, no allegiances, that kind of thing. And then the one I was looking most forward to, but didn't expect much out of, what the team security meeting was on the first day of the summit. Unfortunately, the notes, they couldn't share any notes, so instead we have Steve Ronukin's chili recipe was shared in place of the team security notes. Now, I'm still hoping that team security releases at least some graphs about pre and post, like the whole sequence of things that went around the IS Boxer and ISK buying rule changes. So we might see server loads or number of accounts banned or number of accounts flagged. Like, I'd really like to see things moving, just as sort of a pre and post thing. I won't hold my breath though, because team security has to be super secret about everything because it's an arms race. So Steve Ronikin's chili is in the CSM day 1 minutes at the very end. Also, I'd like to point out that CCP did release a group of developer spotlight videos. They're about 5 to 10 minutes, and they're actually really good. If you're interested at all about the behind the scenes, I was especially happy about the virtual world operations with CCP Applejack. He went through the history of the server hardware and what it looks like today and where they're going. And then there was some speculation on the Eve Reddit about his hints and pictures about what the next server hardware is going to look like. So if that's your kind of thing, I thought it was a really cool video. Also, the cinematic team with CCP Hot Pants and the music team with CCP Real X also had videos. So again, it's a behind the scenes look. I think it was worth looking at, and you should go on YouTube. It's on the main CCP YouTube. Let's move on and get into the market, and as always, we start with Plex, and this is going to flavor the rest of the sort of standard stuff we talk about week over week. As you can see, Plex was flat this last week, and I found this extremely weird. So the prediction I had been sitting on since the IS Boxer announcement is that on the first, where we see the turnaround here, we'd see basically that slope taking effect, maybe curving off a little bit. So I expected to be north of 850 by now. And this last week, this almost last 2 weeks, have been dead level. We see a little dip during the week, and then we see a little bit of a rise during the weekend, but it's seriously small potatoes movement. So I'm a little bit worried about this trend, and we're going to see this as the theme of the show, is everything is flat. This worries me in January because I expect this to be a very busy player time. And so I expect a lot of Plex to be traded. I expect a lot of people to be building things. I expect a lot of people to be dying. And I therefore expect volatility one way or the other. And seeing it just flat kind of tells me that maybe people are waiting for Tiamat. Maybe there's other forces at work. Maybe there's something else winding down and we're not really seeing anything. It's weird. It's super weird to stay this flat. So let's move on to minerals. And again, we'll see the trend repeated. Here we're looking at titanium, and we're down slightly over the week, though I don't expect it to stay down. That would, if titanium starts eking down, that would mean that high-sec miners are taking up more, are producing more minerals than the market thought they would when the IS Boxer changes came in. So it's not saying they are producing at the same efficiency as IS Boxer, so we're not probably seeing the same number of units of trit mined. But we may be seeing a very slight oversupply, but we'll have to wait until next week to make any sort of calls that way. Also, pyrite, we've stayed largely flat, a small dip just like tritanium. Again, same story. I expect pyrite and trit to be best buddies, and anything that trit does, I expect pyrite to do very nearly. Mexilon has been a little more wavery, but has stayed also flat. This I even expect a slight uptick in Mexilon, just because I believe we need more of it than is easily mined, but that's more of a gut thing than a reality thing. Moving on to Isogen, we've seen a small spike last week and a slow slide back down. Again, this is flat behavior. We're seeing a weekend warrior followed by a weekday slump. Again, largely flat around this 125 line. Noxium has been rising, but has petered off and is starting to come down slightly. Noxium I expect to come down a little bit further down to the 600 mark, but it may stay up around 620 for the next week. Zydrene was pretty stable after the IS Boxer announcements, but has now started to show a downward trend. I expect these high-end minerals to be in oversupply again. I expect Zydrene to level out around 400. I have a hard time believing it will go much lower than it was pre-IS Boxer announcement, but I do expect Zydrene to be in oversupply. And then Megasite, in my poorly aligned slide, is now trending down pretty strongly. Again, I expect it to be at pre-IS Boxer levels sometime in the next 2 weeks. And then Morphite, again, we're still seeing pretty anemic demand, but very stable behavior. I've been talking on the Tweetfleet Slack, sort of wondering what's happening with industry, especially since teams have gone out, and now we're looking at a different sort of paradigm for mining. We all disagree on the actual forces at work, so again, I don't expect anything amazing out of Morphite. Moving on to fuel. Again, it's going to be the same theme. It's going to stay flat. So nitrogen is staying flat around 820. No reason to believe it would go up much further. It may stay stable at this 820 for a while. It would take some serious, change in Caldari foot traffic to drive the price up or down, significantly. Caldari fuel blocks are up high this week. Not particularly sure why. It might have to do with robotics, which we will cover later. But they're coming back down into the weekend. It might be a good chance to buy. I don't know about building. It might spike again during the weekend. Oxygen isotopes, which go into Galente towers, are also flat over last week. They're staying at about the 740 mark. I expect them to trend up to 800. I still think that is the gross trend. But until the rest of the market starts to get its head on straight, we may not see that movement. And so it may actually take several months before we see the 800 I'm predicting. Galente fuel blocks, again, we saw a spike last week, and we're seeing a very slight decay. Again, I think this has to do with robotics and maybe coolant. Again, we'll talk about that in the outlier report. Helium isotopes continue to slide down. I have a hard time understanding what's going on here, because I would believe that anyone who's ice mining, 700 ISK per isotope would be a floor for you. And now that we're under 700, we're in extremely weak territory, and I don't know why people keep mining it if it's going to be, helium isotopes go into Amar towers. But the fact still stands, if it's under 700, why wouldn't you take your Mackinac over to Caldari space to mine nitrogen? And why wouldn't you go to Galente space to get 740 rather than 640? So, I don't know what's going on here. This is weird. Again, same behavior as always on Amar blocks. We see them hot on the weekend, cold during the weekdays. It's a little hotter than I expect it to be, especially with the isotopes as low as they are. This might be a good building opportunity with the price of isotopes as low as they are. And then hydrogen isotopes, which go into Minmatar towers, are also in the sub 700 range, and they have been for a few weeks. Again, I don't know why you'd keep mining them at sub 700 when you could be making, 35K extra a block, right? At 740, even more at 800. Like, I know that getting your hands on that ice might be tough, but Caldari space should have plenty of ice anomalies, excuse me. Minmatar fuel blocks, again, same story as the rest of the fuel blocks. Nothing new to say here. So as I said before, the theme of most of the materials this week is a theme of being completely flat, like deadline, totally flat. And I was almost going to cancel this show because there was nothing to talk about, but there's actually some things under the hood that might be hints at some spikes coming up that might disrupt things. So, let's talk about the moon materials to start. Again, when it came to the advanced materials, we saw a very flat behavior over the last week. But photonic metamaterials here really took a nosedive. If you're in the business of building Galente ships, this would be a great chance to buy up those photonic metamaterials. It also might be a good chance, if you can turn them around very quickly, to turn them into reactors. So the ion reactors, I believe they are. Fusion reactors, that's what they are. And so I think this dip down is a very weak trend. I think that we should be back up around the 13,500 mark soon, very soon, over the weekend, hopefully. This one will be one worth keeping your eyes on, and it might be a good chance to go get some buy orders to eke out a little extra margin. But if we start looking under the hood, we see that things like cadmium and cesium, chromium, excuse me, are spiking up over the last week or so. And there's a few other products that were doing this. I think it was cadmium, chromium, and platinum all did these higher spikes. And these are, I want to say, R16s. They're middle of the road rarities. They're not that rare, but they should drive the price of their components, of the things they go into, up. And hopefully this would then bring some extra spikiness to the advanced materials to give you something to work with. So cadmium, the only one I know it goes into is phenolic composites, but that would be a good one to look at. Chromium, again, is spiking high. I don't expect it to stay over 4,000 for very long, but I don't expect it to come much down below 4,000 once it resets. And then platinum, again, spiked a couple weeks ago and is spiking again this week. So I don't know why this particular one that would be in things like nanotransistors, why these are not washing out into the advanced material markets. I know it's screwing the margins of POS reactors, but I know that people who run POS reactions are a fickle group that don't take bad margins lightly, so they'll usually just shut down their towers. So the hope is we'll start seeing prices move around again. We'll see what happens next week. On to PI. We're going to start at the top end and work our way down. Nano factories spiked high last week and the week before, and they remain very high. Again, this would be a great opportunity if you were a PI guy to go be doing these. I haven't seen as many spikes in POS and SOV hardware in the last few weeks, so this actually might come down pretty sharply over the next week, 2 weeks, unless there's a huge Tiamat revelation over the next week. So I think this wave, I think, is going to be done by next week. Robotics, like I said, have been very hot, and this one I usually expect to be super stable because so many people do the whole DIY 100% fuel block thing. And with robotics going as high as they are, this would be a great chance to change your PI string. Like I said for the fuel blocks, those should be following this trend basically exactly. So as robotics are coming up, those are going to be the defining trend to drive the prices more so than isotopes over the next couple of weeks. Enriched uranium, which also goes into fuel blocks, remains high. I think it's still higher than it should be, especially since trial accounts can run PI chains, and it's a pretty easy reaction to run. If you're in the low ends, enriched uranium and coolant are both extremely high and are worth a quick remap if you can do it. I don't know how long these spikes are going to stay around. I kind of expect them to pop once, as long as the isotopes don't move. There's no good reason for it to be as exceptionally spiky. And then down all the way at P0s, I mean, heavy metals are spiking, and I know no one actually looks at the P0 prices when they're figuring out their PI chains, but this again is going to wash forward for the guys who do. Again, as I said a few weeks ago, nanite compound is spiking again. I want to say this is a T3 material, and I can never remember. Between this and PPD methylfullerene, they've been very erratic. I'm wondering why this continues to climb. I do expect it to lose some steam, but I don't know how much. And if you can cash out. I definitely would not give this a buy, but if you've got it, I would sell it. Moving on to ships, the Bustard, which is the it's the Caldari Transport, isn't it? I sure hope so. Has been dropping like a rock over the last few days, and it looks like somebody offloaded a bunch of product to buy orders. If you're in the market for a Bustard, this would be a great chance to buy one, because I expect the prices to rebound in the next week, 2 weeks, maybe we'll see. I don't expect it to go much further down, but I do expect it to start crawling back up again. So we'll see where it goes. On the T3 front, we saw Lokis and Proteuses have been falling, and they keep falling. And as we see right now, the Loki is underneath, it just crossed the 200 million mark, which has been sort of the stable spot for the last few weeks. And at under 200 million, I would call Lokis a buy, especially with other T3 parts flying around as hard as they are. This would be it's a salvage compound. Okay, sorry. With Loki under 200, I don't expect it to come back up very sharply, but at under 200, I think that's a steal. So if you're in the business of buying up T3s, go ahead and buy them. If you're in the business of building T3s, oh my God, stop building Lokis because you're going to start losing money. I just think it's weird to see Loki's so weak rather lately, and I think that there might be there's some weird shifting in Sov Null, and I'm not sure what to read about it. The Proteus also is pretty weak, also underneath the 200 million mark. Again, same idea. If you're in the market for a Proteus, now would be a great time to buy it. I don't expect it to fall much further down below 200, but it's a great chance to go pick it up. And if you're building them, oh my God, stop. Again, same as last week, we see more weakness in the Caldari Navy hookbill and various other Caldari faction warfare cash outs. It looks like they are going full cash out. Somebody is cashing out a whole buttload of loyalty points. I know that there have been a lot of good fights in Hasmajala. I can't remember how to pronounce that. And the Galente have been pushing pretty hard on the Caldari over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm wondering if this is nullsec entity exiting and cashing out. I'm wondering if this is I don't think that their Warzone control is particularly high at the moment, so I don't know what's going on. But hook bills and shield extenders and Graviton, Graviton, Quantum, and Rocket Science data cores are all showing the same behavior. They're down, they're cheap, they're a great chance to buy, and as soon as Caldari Faction Warfare stops cashing out their loyalty points, I expect them to bubble back up again. So this would be a great chance to go buy and hold for 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. Back on the Loki, electronics immobility drivers, the E-War module, I want to call that, are down, and I think that they're a little overcorrected at the moment. This would be a good chance to buy up a few to resell, but again, the volumes aren't very high. We're looking at an average of, I think, 30 a day, so there's not a whole bunch of room to speculate there. But the engineering supplemental coolant injectors are spiking again. They spiked last week and they're spiking this week. I expect them to fall back down to this, to the previous level that they've been at. But, if you can offload some that you're building, this would be a great chance to go cash out tonight or tomorrow. Another interesting module that came up in the analysis was the tracking computer 2s are way high, and without Morphite or any of the advanced materials spiking, this is extremely weird. The price is very high and should be crashing back down to the sub 800k mark. If you're building, this would be a great chance to build a few, but I expect this bubble to burst by, I don't know, by the end of the weekend, surely by next week's show. But if it is going to pop, I would expect an overcorrection as people dump stock from oversupply. So it might be a good chance if you can get parts for under 780k, that would be a decent place to buy. Another interesting popping behavior has been heavy shield maintenance bot 1s. We saw a very hot buy here. I don't know if there were events or a whole bunch of carriers respecking or something. But they have fallen and they continue falling, and I hate to see them under the pre-IS Boxer announcement change, because the minerals are still worth... I think the minerals are still worth this higher value. So again, if you're into speculating, this is a great chance to buy, but keep in mind that they only move about 40-50 a day, so there's not a whole ton of movement to be made, but if you need to buy them up, this would be a great chance to get a bunch cheap. Another interesting bubble, because this is absurd, is mobile tractor units are extremely high. This is, if you have the exploration blueprints, this would be the perfect time to go and build as many as you can get your hands on. Again, I expect you want to get to the market quickly. You want to go and take advantage of this high price at the moment and liquidate something in the order of, again, it only shows about 750 move a day, but this is extremely high, and it'd be a great chance to go cash out some blueprints if you've been sitting on them. And on to the last big part of the show. We talk about last week's predictions, or the predictions I've made in the last few weeks. I brought up the Eris last week for falling below the regular trend line here, and it went ahead and rebounded. So I sure hope you took the advice to go build or buy or turn them around. It looks like somebody sold off a bunch of stock and overproduced, but the market rebounded pretty quickly. I still expect it to slide a little further, but good job if you followed my advice. I'm glad that I'm right once in a while. Another interesting one I brought up a couple of weeks ago, and now somebody has completely screwed up the graph limits, has been the Paladin is flagging low, and I still think it's undervalued at the 1 billion mark. I think that the 1,999,999,000,000 kind of mark is still pretty low, but we may also be seeing an oversupply and people not really buying that many Paladins. And then another one I brought up because I expected it to stay higher and turn around, and I was wrong, is Zor's custom navigation hyperlink. I expected this to turn around because it was attached. We saw a big run-up because it goes on the Confessor, and then we've seen sort of a deflation in that demand over the last few weeks. With the Svipool coming out with Tiamat, I expect this to turn around. I just don't know what the bottom is. Indicators don't say it's at the bottom yet. I don't know if you can move more than like 70 in a day. It's kind of a risky bet, but I do expect it to come back up again, especially with the Svipool. We're going to go ahead and close the show with my official CSM ticket, the people who I think are worth your time to go investigate. I haven't added anyone to the list yet. I'm still behind on the cap stable interviews. So the only two people on it right now are Sugar Kyle and Steve Ronikin. If you listen to the interviews, everyone on CSM has all of the nice things to say about Sugar Kyle. I also do. I think she's an amazing community outreach person. She is extremely smart, and she is willing to go all of the miles to go figure out anything. So I definitely give her number one or number two spot on my ticket, and I hope that you guys help reelect her as well. And then on another major spot on my list is Steve Ronikin, Chili Connoisseur, and API CSM. There is literally no one better in the CSM pool or in much of the community to represent the third-party dev world. I know that it's hard to see what he does. He's been getting better at community outreach, but seriously, all of my votes for Steve Ronikin. He'll probably actually be the top of my ticket because he represents so much of my gameplay, and I have to vote for him. But if you like this show, if you like the tools that get developed, if you think that players need the tools to go and make more cool things for you guys, Steve Ronikin is the guy. Other ones high on my list but haven't made the cut yet are Jun Ting. I think is going to be another excellent community outreach CSM, but I have a problem with her stance on high-sec wars and posses. That's pretty much my only dissenting opinion. And Corbex was another great interview, and if you're in the wormhole community, you absolutely should be following up with him. He is pretty instrumental in keeping wormholes on a hot burner. So if you are a wormhole guy, you should really get to know Corbex. Still haven't had a whole bunch of other candidates bubble up through the ranks yet. Should have more to talk about this weekend and into the next week. Again, I invite you guys to get in contact with me about your favorite candidates, or if you are running, to, again, send me an email and we can chat. I'm more than happy to follow up and do more research. But there is a very large candidate pool, and there's a lot to go through, and I don't have a whole bunch of time. And then just as a closing thought, just because I got a bunch of crap with Steve's recipe not being American enough for you guys, I went ahead and translated it into American, and you can catch these on the slides on Tweetfleet inside the Slack channel. All American out just for you guys. Went ahead and changed it to America units with all of the freedom. So with that, I'm going to pretty much close up the show. Again, I have no violence report yet. We're getting very close. Etienne has recently finished most of the work for getting the scrapers done. I'm going to be working this next weekend on setting up the stomp service to catch new kills, and we still need to figure out what our analysis is going to be, but it's moving forward. I expect more progress on this in February. January is just a really god-awful time for me. Again, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for everyone who tuned in live on Twitch at HLibIndustry. You can follow me on the Tweetfleet at HLibIndustry. You can follow the show on YouTube at youtube.com/EveProsper. I invite everyone to come join us on the Tweetfleet Slack server, which I will put links to everywhere I can figure out. That will be the best place to get in contact with me outside of the show. I have been Lockefox. This has been the Prosper Market Show for the week of January 21st. Thanks again for tuning in.